Welcome, Hypno Junkies, back for another episode of Chaos Head Noah. Hell yeah! I'm getting excited about this. I am looking forward to what's going to happen during our new ending. Even though it's Remy, and I honestly don't give a crap about Remy, I think she's still one of the more uninteresting characters. She's just the boring love interest. But nevertheless, she is probably the most prominent character. Side character, at least, in the game, of course. So this promises to be revealing. I mentioned before that I was starting to suspect that the reason the order was recommended the way it was in the guides that I've seen, Nanami, Yua, Ayase, Kazui, Senna, and then Remy, is that things kind of get a little more interesting as things ramp up. And the Senna route seemed to prove that. I thought it was going to be boring when we were stuck under rubble, but then we got a few bombshells dropped, especially about the Committee of 300. And that promises to be a big revelation, because that affects the entire reality of this game. That puts everything in a whole new context. So I'm sure that's going to play into the actual true ending, which is, of course, what we're doing after this. But what's going to come up here? What are we going to learn about Remy? We've already learned a fair bit. We know a lot about her backstory, but I'm sure new things are going to come out, or new things are going to happen. Some radical new adventure. What is going to take place? But we won't have to wait long, because one of the very first delusions triggers the Remy route. So let's jump right on in and find out what the game's got in store for us. And here we go. So literally the first delusion in the game. We have been at home. We have talked to Grimm. Shogun has sent us things. We went to the cafe real quick. It's our first day going to school in the story. And we're being introduced to this asshole. I liked you better when your head was cut off. So let's just go with a positive. And we'll probably get a quiz, because that seems to be the nature of these things. But this is the Remy route right here. We unlock it at the beginning, so I wonder if that means that Remy's just going to be around from the start. And what's that going to change? Again, I expect a lot of content here. I'm going to call it. I have a feeling this is going to be a 4-parter. I don't think it's going to be a 2-parter. It might be a 3-parter, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 4-parter. Let's see if this is just the longest ending ever. But in the meantime, positive hallucination. Felt bad, just wasn't listening. Oh, they want to go see the site of the second murder. This is before the third murder. The third murder hasn't even happened yet. They're just talking about I don't even think they're talking about the man-child incident. I think they're talking about the group dive. They want to go back to the scene and check it out just because they're a bunch of thrill-seeking teenagers. Maybe she'd pick you as her next victim. Well, that's foreboding. As for your sins, though, no, I think we can come up with a pretty good laundry list of sins for this bastard. But positive wait, what? Hey, we didn't get the cool graphic with the pew bam, the scenes flashing. Oh well, I think this is new dialogue, though. I felt like it should have been obvious to him how much I didn't want to go and see a puddle of blood and gore. It would have been way too much for me. Also, whose eyes are those eyes is not written on the blackboard. It wouldn't be like a haunted house or horror movie or something. People had always died IRL and the killer was still on the loose. Where's the hallucination? So wherever the murderer was likely to be, I'd have liked to be anywhere but there. I'd have liked to be. I love it when people use double apostrophes in a word. Still, I was curious about the murderer. What could have possibly been their motive? Were they just a psychopath that committed crimes for the hell of it? That was probably the most reasonable explanation. No, that's Kazue. Well, whatever. Didn't really matter to me. I mean, I was a serial killer too in ESO. Lol, lol, lol. Just goes to show how much better the 2D world is. Anyway, as I tried my hardest to turn down Mizumi-kun's proposal, I imagined myself like a brawler straight out of some fighting game. Yeah, those are the delusions. A psycho killer, if I ran into a guy like that, I'd turn him into mincemeat. Sure you would. In my delusions, I could kill or spare anyone I wanted. But the people who actually tried to live out those sort of delusions were idiots. Didn't they know that real-life actions have real-life consequences? Hey man, nowadays, lots of people don't know that. But I find it curious that we're not getting screen wobble and we're not getting a little flashy effect signifying a delusion. I'm pretty sure this is new dialogue. So, what's up? We're not in a delusion. We're just, hey, let me think about this instead. Even the new gen killer would be caught eventually, and then they'd rot in prison for years, decades even, just waiting to be sent to the gallows. If I could say one thing to them, it'd be, what a pity. You really should have just kept your delusions to yourself. Interesting how our mindset is changing here. There's the effect. That's what I was waiting for. I went out to buy myself some dinner. Oh, so this is where the delusion is different. Where we actually run into Remy. I thought we ran into Remy after a couple more scenes. It wasn't right after school. All right, well, we went out to buy ourselves some dinner. Maybe we just came through here a little different, a little earlier. I took the road I always used to get to my local convenience store. It was only a 3-minute walk from my base. Maybe we'll run into Darth Spider and stop them. I mean, they know better than to affect us because Suwa knows who we are. I'd walked down this dirty alley more times than I could count. But for some reason, walking through it today, I couldn't help but feel as if I'd stepped into another world. The alley was the same as ever, but it felt like it was the first time I'd ever set foot in it. Familiar yet new, like the opposite of déjà vu. I'd researched the phenomenon online before. The name of it was apparently jamais vu. I researched it too. I researched it in our comments section. Thank you again to the person who explained that to me. I think it was Melty Blood Chan? I think that was your name. Something like that. What's more, the stench of rotten garbage was lingering in the air. The moisture in the atmosphere was so thick that if I hadn't known any better, I'd have assumed, there's that double apostrophe again, I'd have assumed that it had just been raining. The air was like syrup on my skin. I'm going to hear some stabbing, some clinking. There we go. I heard a sound. The faint sound of something dragging across the ground. How is this going to play out different? I stopped in my tracks and listened closely. This might be the same dialogue. I don't remember, but we're going to let it rock because it is the Remy route and this is the Remy scene. It sounded like it was coming from up ahead, from somewhere down the alley and around the corner. Without any streetlights or lit up windows, it was pitch black down there. I'm also going to assume this is new because we got the little delusion effect. So, surely this is something else. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see a thing. It was strange. This was modern-day Shibuya, a place that, along with Shinjuku, was known as the city that never sleeps. So how could there still be places that were this dark? It almost felt like the entrance to a haunted house. Actually, there was one very large distinction. This darkness wasn't man-made. It was real. I didn't want to go any further. Nothing good would come of it. My brain set off every alarm it could, trying to prevent my body from taking another step. Yeah, you really should go the other way, but for some inexplicable reason, my body stepped forward anyway, as if drawn to that repeating sound. My fear urged me to stop, that something horrible would happen if I kept going. My heart started racing. My forehead was slick with sweat. That's new. Up ahead. Suddenly a noise that was beautiful, yet somehow discordant at the same time, reached my ears, a voice garbled by static. Before I knew it, someone had grabbed my forearm. It was all too sudden. I panicked and tried to scream for help, but all that came out was a puff of air. Terrified, I tried to force my body to run away, but it wouldn't listen. I couldn't move an inch. I looked toward my arm, and the hand of the thing that had grabbed me came into view. Assuming it's... Nope, that's not a Remy. That is definitely not a Remy. It was dark green, with skin taut like a mummy's. Countless veins protruded from the surface. It didn't look alive. Sue has produced another monster. For some reason, the swamp thing sounds like Remy. That's weird. If you go any further... To be honest, it made sense that I couldn't move. Going all deer in the headlights was a natural reaction to what was happening. What was surprising to me, though, was that the voice in my ear was so soothing, the fear swelling inside me was starting to vanish. You'll be in danger. A serious, yet gentle voice. I slowly looked over my shoulder Oh. Well, you look like you've already been in some danger. What's with the green arms, though? The first thing I noticed was the Sume Academy emblem. The same emblem you could find sewn onto the chest of each and every Sume uniform. Then I noticed that the person was wearing a skirt, which meant she was a girl. But I didn't have the courage to look at the most important part, her face. She was standing way closer than I was expecting, so I couldn't bring myself to face her. I just stared at her chest for a while. I couldn't put my finger on why, but for some reason something seemed off. Is it the blood or is it the green slime? I don't know. So I turned my attention back toward her hand. There we go, okay. The hand gripping my arm was delicate and feminine, even though just a moment ago I had seen it as green and grotesque. This girl, who was she? What kind of expression was on her face? What kind of expression was she making at me? What was she doing here? I had no idea why, but for some reason, I felt like I knew her. While staring at the pale hand wrapped around my arm, I tried to envision what she looked like. You could just look up and find out. In my delusion, she looked like Saratan. Oh, here we go. Are you quizzing me on what Remy looks like? Is this where the quiz comes from? Had a ribbon in her hair. I'm pretty sure she has a ribbon in her hair. Is wearing glasses. No, that's Hazuki in this route. Is wearing over-the-knee socks. I think so. They're like plaidish. Kind of similar to the skirt. Is wearing a long skirt. Define a long skirt. It's not like a short skirt, like inappropriate short skirt. But it's not like a granny skirt either. It's a... Yeah, I'd say it's shorter than it is long. He's making some sort of salute at me. I mean, typically, that's what she does. She raises her arm and she goes, Bishy! Do we bishy? Is she bishying? Is she bishying right now? I got an achievement, which means she's bishying. In spite of all my questions, I couldn't manage to get a single word out. I simply hung my head in silence. At some point, the dragging sound had stopped. Turn back. And in its place, there was a smell coming from her body. Please, Takumi-kun. She's calling us Takumi-kun, not Taku. The stench of blood. Yeah, that smell is definitely there. And away we go. That was awesome. That was awesome. So we haven't even been to the alley yet. We're just having kind of like a forward vision, a premonition. Our precog powers that you was always talking about have activated. I was sitting behind a computer monitor. I chugged down a cola to contain my excitement, then leaned back in my chair. That had been one hell of a delusion. I especially like that mystery girl. I might give her a name and flesh out her personality in future delusions. The man has eroge literally running in his head. I let my imagination run wild like this all the time. Oh, we know. Usually I'd go on to cast an existing character as the girl, like Saratan, so I might as well do that here too. Actually, Saratan doesn't quite fit the vibe of that mystery girl. Well, at any rate, it was a lot of fun mixing together 2D and 3D in my delusions. I was the god of the world inside my head, even though you couldn't move. And there, everything bent to my will. I'll definitely make the next one more sexy. Fooey. I said that to myself as if I were at my base, but when I remembered I was in an internet cafe, I quickly covered my mouth. You should cover your mouth more often. I quietly peeked outside. It didn't seem like anyone had heard me just now, so meh. Okay, something about that background ambiance flipped. I think we're done with the delusion. For an indoor person like me, at cafe was the only hangout spot I enjoyed. Let me try to E, and we will end up in the same place or somewhere else. So let's give it a bang. And that did not last very long. I skipped about 2 minutes. We were at the cafe, then we went home 2 hours prior. What happened 2 hours prior? Shogun and Remy? The light of the sunset bathed the hospital room in a vibrant orange. All was silent, as if time itself had stopped. Only a single person was present. Completely still, as if asleep, sat a boy in a wheelchair. It was around the time of day when one would find nurses rushing around the hospital, serving patients their dinners, and yet no such signs of activity made their way to the room. A moment later, the silence was broken by the sound of a door opening. "Hey, the casual wear. I think this is what we saw you wearing when Remy ran into you at the train station." "You do have a ribbon in your hair. Good, Psy'Min." A lone girl entered the room. The boy in the wheelchair lifted his head to acknowledge her, but did not speak. For a moment the girl hesitated at the entrance. Looking around the room, she could sense a faint aura of loneliness emanating from it. The drab-looking room was minimal in size and reeked of disinfectant. This was where the two of them spent their days. An isolated location, eternally unknown to the rest of humanity. Not a single soul, be they a doctor, nurse, friend, or relative, ever came to visit. The boy and girl rarely exchanged words with one another. The boy had been hospitalized and for a whole year had been comatose. Only just a month ago had he awoken. The girl had been essentially using his room as a place to stay. However, as much as she did trust him, their relationship had nothing to do with any sort of romantic or sexual attraction. Well, of course not, he's a raisin. Her only goal was to repay her debt to the boy. Nothing more, nothing less. The boy was intentionally cold and distant, having even told her not to return once before. Yet all the same, she remained. This was in part because she had nowhere else to go. During his coma, she had been his lone caretaker. The couch in the room had become her bed, and even now, after he had awoken, she still used it as such. "I brought you something to eat." She spoke with warmth and sincerity. She held out a bag of food she had brought from the convenience store. Her words scared away the static atmosphere and breathed new life into the dead world that surrounded them. The girl surrendered herself to such an illusion, but did not mention this to the boy. She laid several kinds of bread atop the empty bed. "Hey, this has been on my mind for a while now, but is food like this enough to keep you healthy? I don't have much time left as it is. Regardless, I'm sorry for sending you out to buy these." "It's all right, really. I got some food for myself, too, so don't worry about it." She forced herself to smile at the boy. Then, taking an egg sandwich for herself, she moved toward the window. Upon opening the window, the crisp autumn breeze permeated the quiet hospital room. Comfortably greeted by the wind, the girl narrowed her eyes and perched nimbly on the windowsill. The room was located considerably high up. Imaginably, falling would mean certain death. This, however, hardly mattered to the girl, who simply took a hearty bite out of her sandwich. The boy in the wheelchair paid her no heed. He did not even attempt to reach for the bread laid out on the bed. "Listen, I need to ask you again. Are you really going to try to awaken him?" Now remember, this happened 2 hours ago by our time. So, before maybe we went to the cafe or even had that delusion. And that would kind of make sense because, well, that wasn't a delusion. That was obviously a premonition. We know that's something that's going to happen. It's not something just in his imagination. That was fed to him in some way. I am. The chat the two of us had yesterday made that very clear to me. Nozomi has been keeping an eye on him, and Noah too is nearing completion. We must make haste. No matter what it takes? That's right. But that makes us no better than Nozomi. Scaring him, pushing him to the edge. I wonder if Shogun is actually aware of the nature of the world and the Committee of 300 as well, because that would cast his motivations in a new light also, especially his motivations for destroying Noah, if he's aware of the true nature of it. Especially if he's got dealings with Nozomi, both personally and also Remy, clearly. He is all we have. But if he awakens, you'll die. I've been prepared for that from the very beginning. My death is suitable punishment for shoving all my responsibilities onto him. The girl kept her gaze focused on the setting sun, not daring to look over her shoulder at the boy. Her countenance laid her emotions bare. She looked as if she might burst into tears at any moment. Could erasing him be an option? If that were to happen, I would not hesitate to put myself through another year-long coma so that I could create another me. Perhaps even longer. But by the time I would succeed, Noah 2 would have long since been completed. An event that shall cast the world into despair. So maybe that was the way he sort of paid the price for another him, or dispelled the negative energy, or saved up the positive energy to do something like this. Despite his gentle tone, his words were laced with a touch of cynicism. Upon hearing them, the girl couldn't help but let out a sigh. I can't support the way you're going about this. We can't allow Noah 2 to reach completion. I know we can't, but putting myself in his shoes, it's just so sad. And there's no way I can just stand around and watch while you kill yourself. I'm doing nothing of the sort. I'll take care of it. The boy finally moved a little, taken aback by the girl's abrupt yet resolute words. What exactly do you mean by that? Finishing off the last of her sandwich, she stepped down from the windowsill, then turned to face him. Then, for some inexplicable reason, she snapped into a pose resembling that of a salute. Bishi! I swear to protect him from Nozomi. That way, you won't have to die. But that negates the very reason he was created. And it doesn't solve anything. Noah 2... I'll take care of Noah 2 as well. That just isn't something you can handle. I've already made up my mind. I won't let you do what you plan to do. I'm going to protect you. She gave him a frail yet tender smile. At the sight of this, the boy lost any and all words he had. You predicted there'll be another incident today, right? Ah, the third. It isn't just a prediction. It's an absolute fact. I've seen their delusion myself. If that's true, then I can't let him get involved. I'll be going now. So this is probably before the delusion then. So he had a vision. A delusion fed to him by Remy. Don't go down there. Let's see what that changes. She approached the door. Even if you interfere, I will still force him to awaken as planned. As she opened the door, hearing the boy's words directed at her back, she paused for one final time. No signs of life came from the hallway. Not a single human being was in sight. And not a single sound reached the room. Hey, just what are we exactly? The two of us have been here for over a year, all while nobody even knows we exist. Being here, I can't help but feel like my existence is nothing more than an illusion or something. I think this hospital's gloominess is getting to my head. Remy, you shouldn't get involved. Despite the boy's pleading, the girl did not look back. Make sure to eat the bread I got you, okay? After murmuring those last few words, the girl left the hospital room. And we're moving on. Wait, maybe not. Let's stick with this. We're going to let this play out and see where it goes. Before I knew it, I found myself in an alleyway in Maruyamacho, the same alley I always took back home from Animate. I blinked a couple times to make sure that I wasn't just seeing things. Oh? I took a look inside my bag. Nothing inside but the usual. Some textbooks and a handheld game system. Should there have been something else? I hadn't bought anything from Animate today. Strange. Normally I never leave Animate empty-handed. I don't remember this text. Well, whatever. I let out a sigh and continued walking. Shouldn't take me more than 15 minutes to reach my base from here. I was only a short walk from the station, yet the dazzling neon lights and thick crowds had all but vanished. There were the occasional passerby, usually older couples headed to love hotels or random businessmen heading home, but aside from that, the place was deserted. Hard to believe this was still Shibuya, home of the bustling DQN-infested center guy. Somehow, it was already nighttime, and if that weren't enough, it was especially cloudy tonight, making it even darker than usual since the moonlight couldn't shine through. How's Remy going to interfere? Was the delusion the interference? Here we go again? I'd walked down this dirty alley more times than I could count, but for some reason, walking through it today, I couldn't help but feel as if I'd stepped into another world. The alley was the same as ever, but it felt like the first time I'd ever stepped foot in it. What's more, the stench of rotting garbage was lingering in the air. Same comments, but different wording. The moisture in the air was so... Nope, that wording is exactly the same. If I hadn't known any better, I'd assumed that it was just been raining, complete with a double apostrophes. The air was like syrup on my skin. Wait, hold on. Why did I say again? Yeah. That's what Psy'Min Sezz. Has this happened before? Hadn't I felt this sense of jamais vu before? Fuck, was I getting my delusions mixed up with reality or something? That sounded like the kind of nonsense some expert psychiatrist would say on one of those TV talk shows. Jay? Well, whatever. The point was, right at that moment, I was feeling a strange sense of jamais vu. But on top of that, I could feel a prickling sensation on the nape of my neck, a sensation I knew very well, the feeling of being watched from the heavens. Shogun is watching to see what Remy is going to do. He's like, stop meddling, stop meddling, stop meddling. And I could say for sure that it was no delusion. It felt inescapable, as if, no matter where I went, the gaze would follow. There was no doubt in my mind, somebody was watching me. That was just how powerful the sensation was. I desperately wanted to look behind me, but I challenged myself not to. It was a game that I played every once in a while, a test. I called it the "it'll take more than that to make me turn around" game. Yeah, that's why I keep saying you lose every time you turn around. The aim of the game, obviously, was to avoid turning around. I played it when I heard a weird sound or felt like I was being watched. Whenever I felt the gaze, I tended to imagine some kind of insanely terrifying ghost or monster looking behind me. Not like I'd ever actually seen anything in the past 17 years, though, even on the occasions when I'd lost my patience and turned around. Still, I'd always been able to have at least a little bit of fun with it. I'd listen to the wind, raise an eyebrow suspiciously, and say phrases ripped straight out of a JoJo manga. That was the only reason why I did it, because it was fun. Definitely not because I was scared or anything. No, perish the thought. What do you think you're looking at, bastard? Whose eyes are those eyes? Heh, gotcha. Okay, to be honest, I was really just trying to act calm. But before I knew it, I'd stopped dead in my tracks. I'd sensed a change in the atmosphere, paralyzing my body in place. I then noticed my face was soaked with sweat, and my knees were shaking. Unable to take it anymore, I turned around. Remy? Which meant that I'd lost, yep. But thankfully there was no one behind me, so I won. Not even a car passing by or something. So why did I feel so uneasy? I wonder if those again comments were on our first playthrough. I'm going to have to go back and watch. The ringing in my ears ceased. What, the rucksack stopped? I hadn't even realized it, but I've been hearing some ringing sound this whole time. But still, until now, I had been completely oblivious to it. And now that it was gone, I couldn't hear anything at all. For a place like Tokyo, this sort of sudden silence seemed completely unreal. It was the sort of perfect silence where you could hear a pin drop if you focused hard enough. So I closed my eyes and listened closely, just to see what I could hear. Metal bang, ping ping. But I still couldn't hear anything at all, fair enough. That was pretty strange. Yeah, wasn't there a bang bang during this scene for like 30 minutes or whatever, according to the neighbors? No, that was definitely strange. There were all sorts of things I should have been hearing. Trains running by, car horns in the distance, some sort of small noise. So why did I hear nothing? Was something wrong with my ears? I felt compelled to shout just so I could hear something. I felt like I might go crazy otherwise, but I couldn't do it. The silence was deafening, but it made me fear what would happen if I broke it. There's the banging. I knew that was coming. Suddenly a single sound resonated through the silent world. I turned my head to look for the source, but instead I found a slew of shining objects scattered across the asphalt. Are those crosses? When I saw them, my body suddenly unfroze, and naturally, perhaps too naturally, I started moving toward them. Driven by curiosity, I picked one up. It was made of metal with a long pointy end like a needle. A stake? Or a nail, maybe? Whatever it was shaped like a cross, hence my initial confusion. It felt almost phantasmal, like it might float away at any moment. I tightened my grip on it. And the sound continued to reverberate faintly in the distance. I'm going to continue to believe that that's the stake that we used to stab that one DQ-ed in the school during the Causeway ending. A sound cold enough to send chills down my spine, repeating incessantly. Even so, I couldn't help but move toward the source. It was like I was in a trance. Was it just morbid curiosity? Or was I hoping that the noise would save me, that it would grant me salvation from this silent world? You know, this reminded me of that one German folktale. What was it called again? Oh yeah, the Pied Piper of Hamelin. A story in which the sound of one man's pipe lured over 100 children into following him. I don't remember that line either. The clanging sound refused to stop, and the farther I walked, the louder it got. Sound to be like that. It was coming from farther down the alley, past the corner on my left. I could already tell if I turned that corner I would be met with the source of that sound. And yet I never thought of turning back. Such a thought didn't even cross my mind. It was like my body was moving on its own. And so I turned the corner, and my eyes were struck by a vibrant crimson shining through the darkness. Now, this scene was not that bloody when Bond was talking about it, which still makes me wonder what's going on. And also why you're here at all, because in the Sua flashback where we relived this, you were not here. So are we going to get some explanation for that now? My first thought was, where have I seen this art piece before? And my second thought was, it doesn't look very realistic. Maybe I was so shocked that my brain wasn't processing things properly. Normally, when I saw something this terrifying, I'd freeze, scream like a little girl, and piss my pants all at once. Maybe Remy came here meaning to do something, but she got affected by the rucksack and basically fell into a trance too. And whatever plan she had just kind of got kiboshed. The work consisted of spikes arranged on a wall, like the quills of a hedgehog or pins in a pincushion. But when I looked closer, I realized the pincushion was leaking blood. So then, that meant that the puddle of crimson below it was blood. The feeble glow of a streetlight just barely reached it, causing the pool to gleam in the darkness. Scattered around were a few shining pieces of what looked like meat. Maybe, I couldn't really tell. I tried to gulp, but my throat had gone completely dry, not a single drop of saliva to be found. And then I realized, the thing that was nailed to a wall, oh, I don't remember that, was a human corpse. A murder that was far too unnatural, far too brutal, far too immoderate. And the one who'd done it, the one who had nailed these stakes to the wall, was a single girl. As for how I knew that, well, apparently you identify them by skirts, so it was because she was right there, standing in front of her art, holding a bundle of stakes in her blood-soaked hand. I could only see her back from here, so I obviously had no clue what she looked like. What I could tell, though, was what she was wearing. A Sume Academy uniform. Man, this school is just bad news. You thought your school had delinquents. The stench of rotting garbage was intensifying, and I was hit with wave after wave of nausea. I put a hand to my mouth to stop myself from vomiting, but I was nearly at my limit. And then it suddenly dawned on me, the cause of my déjà vu, the answer to the question, where have I seen this before? We're going to flash back to Grimm's little drawing. Oh yeah, the picture. Yeah, the picture that Shogun sent us. Right. See, Shogun likes to interfere too. The picture Shogun sent. Without meaning to, I said that out loud, and without realizing how dangerous or even deadly that mistake could be. In response to my voice, her shoulder twitched slightly, and with that, she slowly turned her face to me. Hi, Remy. How you been? I would like some bread as well. In that moment, it was as if her gaze was piercing straight through me. Such desolate eyes. She had just killed someone. She actually hadn't. Fade to static. Went back here. She too had heard that sound. Wait a minute. Did we just flip to Remy? Like another Remy? What's going on? She too had heard that sound. Did Remy come to save the day but was too late? What's going on here? Before, there had been a strange whirring sound, like something tearing its way through the air. So, a rucksack. We know all about rucksacks now. Exactly. Soon after she heard it, she discovered its origin. A rucksack worn by a nearby suspicious-looking person. When she attempted to pursue them, however, they escaped. That was when she heard another sound echoing in the distance. The shrill sound of stakes being nailed into a wall. Well, this is going to go very differently. And though faint, the whirring sound from before could still be heard as well. Oh, never mind. We're still in range of someone else's rucksack. The two sounds resonated in grating harmony, creating the illusion that her ears may start bleeding at any moment. Am I too late? Yes, I'm afraid you are. Lightly biting her lip, she sprinted toward the source of the sound, and there her eyes landed upon... Oh! She's seeing it as it actually is. A corpse affixed to a wall by several cross-shaped stakes. What the hell? Startled, she surveyed her surroundings. Though she loathed to admit it, the status of the victim did not matter to her in the slightest. If granted the opportunity, she would naturally have preferred to save him, but it was much too late. And now there were more important matters at hand. She couldn't let Nishizu Takemi see this place. She couldn't let him be consumed by fear. Where could he be? They're like out of phase with each other. What's going on? With that on her mind, she returned her gaze to the corpse. Oh, now it looks different? Now it's changed? Are you resonating with Takemi's delusion? And we know what Takemi saw was the delusion, because A, Remy wasn't here, and B, what this Remy is seeing is what Bon and the police reported. Not the blood-soaking. She was at a loss for words. She had only looked away for a second, and yet in that short time, countless stakes had gruesomely mutated the corpse. Just a moment ago, there had only been a few stakes on the wall, just enough to suspend the corpse in midair. There hadn't even been any external injuries, let alone blood. But now a grisly spectacle lay before her eyes. The sight of it had left her reeling in horror, frantically fighting to endure her nausea. Her vision distorted as uncertainty seized her heart. Is a delusion eroding reality? In that moment, the girl came to notice that the changes did not end there. Oh! Hey! Oh! I thought she was seeing the other Remy. She is the other Remy. Her clothes were different. She was wearing a uniform unfamiliar to her from a school she didn't recognize, because she wasn't going to Sume yet. In addition, her body was stained with crimson, and in her hand was a stake. Yeah, you got caught up in this. No, is this... So when Remy said that there were four people's delusions intermixing, were two of those people Remy? No, we don't know what the other Remy is yet. Hang on, let's not jump to conclusions. A delusion synchro. Someone's delusion had edited the scene around her. The gruesome corpse, her clothes, the rich scarlet blood. Was any of it real? No. It couldn't possibly be real. There was no stench of blood. She couldn't feel the icy chill of the metal stake in her hand. She put her hand to her bloody cheek and it came away dry. She carefully reached for one of the stakes planted in the body, but when she tried to grab it, her hand grasped nothing but air. Everything was a delusion, a far, far too vivid delusion. But at any moment, the delusion could become a reality. It had already taken form. Once real booted, it would merge with reality. Okay, we're elaborating on this. Not just real booting swords, but real booting delusions. What was she to do? The girl was overtaken by doubt. A delusional space like this, oozing negativity, was well beyond anything she was used to dealing with. Such a powerful deluder may have already taken Nishiju Takami's life. She might suddenly find Takami pinned to the wall in this man's place. At this point, it would not even surprise her. Driven by anxiety, she let out a soft cry, and right at that moment... The picture! Shogun sent! Oh, she is becoming the Ribby. She did get caught up in it. Kind of like I was talking about. The terrified scream of a boy resounded from behind her. It was more like a whimper, but yeah. And you turned to face him. Yep. At first, she seemed shocked, but her expression quickly changed to a somber smile, and then... Thank goodness. Yeah, I wanted to meet you, or whatever she said the first time round. So we're kind of getting this whole scene from the very, 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 very first time we saw it fleshed out here. She softly whispered those words. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for what? Well, at least her eyes aren't dead this time. And why was she smiling at me? I didn't understand. The questions kept piling up to the point where it sent a chill down my spine. Now panicking, I tried averting my eyes. The first thing that came to mind was, I don't want anything to do with this. Well, neither does Remy, but here we are. I mean, for starters, I could hardly make eye contact with regular 3D girls, let alone psycho killers. And the police would be here soon, and I was hungry. That's why I should just go home. Yeah, I need a Big Mac. I need to get out of here as fast as humanly possible. Oh, sorry, a Big Mick. If I don't, I'll go insane. Taku. Suddenly she called me by name. Even though I'd never told her my name. Even though I'd never even met her before. I was looking for you. As she looked for me, her lips twisted into a horrific, fearsome smile, almost like she was a demon. So this is what she said the first time around, but now we know why. But it's getting twisted by Nishiju because he's just freaking out. Yeah, like that. Perfect example. Screaming at the top of my lungs, I ran as fast as my legs could carry me. It hurt to breathe, but I didn't care. I just kept screaming and running as if my life depended on it. At one point along the way, I turned my head to look behind me, but she didn't seem to be chasing me. How does Ribby react to this? We need to go back to her perspective. Go back to her perspective. We didn't go back to her perspective. We're back in our dumb crate. I was completely winded, my lungs struggled to shovel air in and out, and my agonized panting echoed through my room. Is this the same? I plopped down on my computer chair, my body and clothes were completely drenched in sweat. What the fuck had just happened? Another of my delusions? Well, I'm going to hit the E key, and we'll see if we end up in the same spot, or if we end up way further. And once again, we did not have to go far. Our boy is in his crate. He took one of the stakes with him, apparently. He consoled himself with Seratan, as is his way. And in the very next scene, we are here in Yoyogi General Hospital once again. Man, we are just unloading in Chapter 1 here. We haven't even met Yua yet. The vast majority of the nurses at Yoyogi General Hospital were out making their rounds. Only one could still be found sitting alone at the nurses' station, and I bet she's wearing glasses, because I told her to. She stared at a laptop with a deadpan expression on her face. Despite not being on break, she was in the middle of a phone call. It did not seem to matter to her the slightest that she was violating her work's policy on cell phone usage. That is the least of Hazuki's crimes. Reflected in her blank eyes was a certain chat log, shining brightly on the computer screen before her. Oh, here he is. Nishiju Takami. Here he is. Also, how are you seeing this chat? Yeah, Grim wasn't here for this. You sure it's him? Most likely. Speaking on the other end of the call was a man. It was clear from how they spoke to one another that the conversation had nothing to do with work. He's not using his real name, though, just his online handle. But he did know about the formula. I'll copy everything and send it over. Is this just when they began to become aware of Nishiju Takemi? Or when they became aware of Shogun because he knew the stupid IR2 formula? With a mechanical flick of her wrist, the nurse moved the mouse with the intention of copying the log. However, she suddenly stopped, her brow furrowed. What on earth? Something wrong? The nurse ignored the man's question, narrowing her eyes as she brought her face closer to the screen. The German? Oh, does she understand German? Or the whose eyes are those eyes? The screen still displayed the chat logs. Did Shogun say something in German, knowing Neidhart wouldn't be able to read it? Neidhart. Takemi, obviously. But maybe Hazuki knows German. And Shogun just kind of told her to go fuck herself or something. Or called her out of some knowledge of something. The screen still displayed the chat logs. However, something seemed different from a few seconds prior. Some stuff disappeared. Link trying to say, I don't see the IR2, but I forget where that appeared in the chat. Something had changed. An impossibility considering they were logs, not real-time conversations. And yet, even though everything had felt perfectly normal a moment ago, something felt incredibly out of place now. Is it because they separated into their... they separated chronologically? Because our understanding is that Yua told us Shogun made those posts from the cafe. Like the next day or something like that. Yeah, Shogun, whose eyes are those eyes, blah, 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 Monday. And then Neidhart, blah, 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 Sunday. That's what happened. Interesting. It took place right in front of her. The timestamps. They changed. What do you mean? Yeah, Sue was like, what on earth? The man understood how absurd her claim was, and the voice on the other end of the call became much lower. It was perfectly normal just a second ago. What on earth is going on? Chill out. We're dealing with a gigalomaniac, and a monster one at that. So they were tampered with then. Looks like they don't want us knowing who they really are. This whole timestamp deal makes it look like he's putting on a one-man show. Oh, did Shogun do that intentionally for some reason? Looking at it that way, maybe that's the goal. They turned reality into a delusion. Keep an eye out, Shino. Seems they're watching your every move. Motherfucker. This is why they had that little play act in the stairwell way off in chapter 4 or 5 or whatever. Suddenly a sense of uneasiness crept up the back of Shino's neck. Covering her nape with her hand, she turned to face the source of the gaze. But there was nobody there. Not a single soul could be found within the nurse's station. May the divine light save us. Shino murmured those words of prayer to herself, hoping they would sweep the fear away. Well, we're already in a fascinating place. About a day had passed, and I'd spent pretty much every hour of it in Baselard. I'd hardly ever made time to eat. I'd immersed myself fully in the role of Neidhart, and in the process completely erased every trace of Nishiju Takemi. Well, this is definitely not a delusion. That is absolutely this boy's reality, which means we are past the fun bit. But we'll hit E again and see where it drops us off. And we have pushed forward quite a bit, so welcome to where the E key deemed fit to let us off. First thing I want to notice, and it's nice that we came in on this picture. Hey, turns out the girls in this school actually do have short and long skirts. Look at that. I wasn't even aware of that. That didn't even That didn't even cross my mind. But as we were flashing forward, I noticed that in some of the CGs. It's like, oh, hey, look at that. Some of the girls have long skirts. Some of the girls have short skirts. As it turns out, Yua is wearing a long skirt, but I don't believe any of our other female main characters are wearing long skirts. She's the only one. I think everyone else is wearing a short skirt. I can't remember what Kazue is wearing, but I'm pretty sure the other four definitely. But yeah, that's why the quiz, I guess. In the meantime, we have gone to get our shitty-ass foam D-sword because we ran into Remy in our crate. I wonder why. There was that one time, I think it was maybe the first time we replayed the game to get the second non-character ending, and we had this sort of situation where we remembered her name and it came to us in black letters on a white background, Remy. But that didn't happen this time, and I wonder what triggers that. I was watching for it. I was ready to go through that scene again for the sake of, Sakahara Remy content, thinking that it might be different, but no, it played out exactly the same as it did the first time through. Weird. But it did freak us out, and it did make us go get a D-sword, and it's a terrible D-sword, but Nanami got her bangle, and now we're going to school, or rather Sakihara Remy is going to school. And I have a feeling this is the day that the minimum attendance chart says Takumi is supposed to be here, but we'll see what happens. Regardless, Remy remained expressionless as she moved forward. She was walking down one of Sume Academy's many hallways, this one lined with classrooms for second-year students. She was not accustomed to wearing a uniform, as this was her first time setting foot in this place, but she's going to pretend she's always been here. She paid no mind to all the other students in her vicinity. However, her apparent composure was a mere facade, one intended to desperately conceal a boiling pot of unease within her. Her somewhat awkward march through the halls betrayed this, but as she proceeded toward her destination, she kept her head high all the same. Soon enough, she reached room 2C. This is the place? She already knew the answer. It was Nishiju Takumi's class. She placed her hand on the closed door, only then did she realize that her fingers were trembling. So even when she was meeting us for the first time in her crate, and Mizumi, we called him to confirm that Remy was a friend. And I think there was a pause during that. And then Mizumi was like, oh yeah, Remy, I know her. Even though we were, BSing and delusioning. But now we're like, well, now she's really coming in. And she's going to meet Mizumi for the first time and act like they've known each other for a year and a half and join the class. On a normal day, I would have wanted to come here. Such as a desire crossed her mind for a moment, but she stopped her delusions from progressing any further. After taking a small breath, she vigorously slid the door open and just walked in like she owned the place. Good morning, everyone. Her stoic expression faded, as if it had never existed to begin with. The classroom before her was remarkably cheerful. Overflowing with energy, she lifted her right hand to her forehead, snapping into the pose of a salute. Remy's greeting resounded throughout the classroom, and the classroom fell as silent as death itself. Class had not yet started, so the room was about half full, but everyone that was there was looking her way, visibly puzzled. The delusion has not yet taken hold. And for good reason. Nobody in this class, nobody in this school knew who she was. And for that very reason, Remy had to first make sure to draw everyone's attention. She drew her D-sword, and yet not a soul reacted. Is this why Senna said that we had to draw as much attention to ourselves as possible when we were infiltrating? Is that a mechanic of this brainwashing delusion influencing what other people see? I mean, focus is important in hypnosis. It's the primary principle. She drew her D-sword, and yet not a soul reacted. The sword, with blades arranged like inflexible feathers, was still a delusion. It was visible to no one. For her purposes, however, that was enough. Go forth, my delusion. She fired her thoughts at the eyes of those gazing at her. Then, as if it had somehow been planned beforehand, everyone blinked in unison. And then, all at once, the room's frozen atmosphere thawed. Remy looked around the room once more, and then a smile formed on her face. Good morning.
おはよう、咲畑。
Morning, Sakihata. What up? Why so loud? It's way too early, Rimi. You mind being a bit quieter when you come in next time? One after another, each student spoke to her like they had always known her. Damn! I wish I could do that. Even though until mere seconds ago, they had never seen her before. But it was different now. Rimi had planted delusions into them, delusions that soon attained mutual recognition. I'm going to have the words mutual recognition going through my head every single time I do a stage hypnosis show from now on. It's just... This game is ruining words for me, just like Danganronpa and Ace Attorney do. Recognition that Sakihata Rimi is a student at Sume Academy and is a member of Class 2C. 2 days prior, she had tested this trick on Nishiju Taku, but it had proven to be not very effective. As a result, she had been worrying over how exactly it would unfold when she tried it here. Oh, so she tried to do her trick on us when she came to our crate. But it didn't work because we're Takumi. But now she's doing it on the normies, and it's like, oh, hey, look at that. Boy, how do you not just want to take over the world when you can do shit like that? But it seemed her anxiety had been unfounded. After seeing the smiles of her chattering classmates, she heaved a sigh of relief. Hey, Mizumi, how you doing? She recalled her D-sword, and then approached an empty seat from a vacant row in the back of the room. This desk was another delusion she had created. Oh, did she insert a desk for herself? I wondered where she was going to sit. You have to delude yourself a whole bunch of report cards and other records in various folders around the school, too. She placed her bag down, but rather than sitting, she turned to face the boy approaching her. Hey, Mizumi. Yo, Rimi. Hey, Mizumi Dasuke. Mizumi Dasuke. Like she's trying to remember his name or something. Rimi spoke his name 3 times to ensure her certainty. Why'd you say my name 3 times? And my whole name at that? Don't worry about it. I just felt like it. Daichin. Yeah, that's your name now. Mizumi was Taku's friend. In addition to being quite handsome, he clearly put care into the way he dressed. He's dressed like literally everyone else here. Rimi did not know how his friendship with Taku had come to be. Also a delusion, but I guess she doesn't know that yet. Perhaps Takumi was responsible. Takumi in italics, fabricating this friendship through delusions. Or perhaps Mizumi and Takumi truly had formed a genuine friendship on their own with no outward interference. Yeah, you wish. The case mattered not. All that mattered was that he and Takumi were friends. Rimi's delusion had already implanted fresh memories within him. Just casually brainwashing people. Where's Taku? He's not here yet. And then again, is today one of the days he's supposed to come? Pretty sure, yeah. Leave it to his babysitter to be on top of things. I don't think I could ever wrap my head around that guy's schedule. Rimi wore a strained smile. It was a smile formed from feelings of guilt. Everyone's memories had been altered with delusions. This would remain Rimi's secret, with nobody else suspecting a thing. Well, at least she feels bad about it. Those around her would act friendly with her. However, nothing could change the fact that these relationships had been crafted from falsehoods. Man, if only Kazue knew how to do this, she wouldn't get beat up as much. She had thought that she had become completely accustomed to loneliness by now. But by placing herself in this classroom, she was subjecting herself to desolation stronger than ever before. End scene? Takumi comes to school? Takumi comes to school. Hello, long skirt. I just barely got to school on time. It probably wasn't the best idea to stay up playing Vidya until early in the morning on a school night. I'd had to run in order to make it on time. This sounds new. When I got to the classroom door, I stopped and took deep breaths to try and catch my breath. I guess Kazue is going to actually come in a moment too, isn't she? I couldn't act in a way that'd make me stand out to my classmates. Well, we'll skim through this a little bit. I slowly made my way into the classroom, keeping my head down. I couldn't let myself make eye contact. Of course, I didn't give a mindless greeting like good morning either. Rimi getting called out. I think this is all the same, so we'll see if the E button disagrees. And as it turns out, the E-key agrees with me. In fact, it agreed with me so hard, it threw me into, I don't even know what this, chapter 7? This is immediately, and I mean immediately after Esper Boy's rescue quest. We went to O-Front. We got thoroughly humiliated. We found a Darth Spider helmet and a wheelchair. And next thing we know, we cut to this. And I have a feeling that this is Sakihara Rimi coming to get Nanami's hand. I don't know why, but it did disappear, and that was never explained. So why else would she be here when we're not? Our boy really needs to get better at locking his door from the outside, because people just wander in here like nobody's business. Standing in the center of a dimly lit room, Sakihara Rimi hung her head, remaining deathly still. The room's owner, Nishiju Takumi, Taku, was not currently present. He had not locked the door before he left, so Rimi had easily been able to enter. Takumi, you idiot. She checked the time on her cell phone. It was nearly 10 p.m. Is Taku still at Scramble Crossing? Well, even if he's not, he goes to the hospital next anyway, so it's fine. If she had been able, she would have helped him straight away. She had already attempted to once before, but the closer she had gotten to Scramble Crossing, the denser the crowd had become. And eventually, she had been rendered unable to move. I guess Kazubi was just lucky to be there, because she experienced everything with her inner voice. In the end, the Esper Boys show had concluded before she had reached O-Front. It was then that she had heard Takumi's voice. He pleaded with her to return Nanami's hand. How did she hear that? How did he plead with her to return Nanami's hand? Did she hear his inner voice? She was close enough? It was not often that Takumi would ask Rimi for a favor. Nozomi had kidnapped Nanami, and they were currently subjecting her to all manner of torture. Takumi had been able to locate her using his mind-reading abilities. Oh, no. So Takumi, Shogun Takumi. Not idiot Takumi. Okay, that's the Takumi that wants the hand back. Hang on a second. Okay, that seems to be what's being implied here. She heard Takumi's voice, but it's not Taku, it's Takumi, not Taku. So Shogun wants the hand returned, and he had been able to locate her using his mind-reading abilities. As she and Nanami had been acquainted in the past, briefly, hearing this news broke Rimi's heart. A cardboard box sat on the sofa. Contained within it was a cell phone, a petite bangle, and Nanami's severed hand. The sight left Rimi at a loss for words. Concern, anguish, and sorrow overwhelmed her. All at once, memories of her own past hardships flashed through her mind. Forcefully biting her lip, Rimi stared at the hand for a few moments. And then, with a deep breath, she gently closed the lid of the box, sealed it with duct tape, and left the room with the package in tow. That's all there is to it. That's all we get. Just how the box left, and also that Shogun is getting it, which I think is worth noting. What is the plan for it? Like, are you gonna reattach it? Is that gonna happen in the true ending? Rimi took out her cell phone and connected to the One Seg television broadcast service. The events at Scrabble Crossing had been on the news earlier, so she tuned into it hoping to confirm something. But when the channel came on, it was in the midst of a commercial break, which must have meant that they were not broadcasting live anymore. In other words, Taku must not have been at Scramble Crossing anymore. Knowing this, Rimi reluctantly returned to the hospital room she shared with Taku. Interestingly enough, we zipped right past the scene where Rimi watched Ayase getting admitted. I wondered if we were going to stop for more there on either the Ayase route or this route, but no, we just zipped right through it. Also, yes, Kazue does wear a short skirt. I should have realized that everyone wears short skirts, considering how many times Taku comments on almost being able to see people's underwear. But yeah, Yua wears a long skirt. Interesting. Hey, Shogun, how you doing? The lights were off. The room was as pitch black as when she had left it. Are we going to get an explanation on the towel, too? Lots of things. The bed was empty, as Takumi was sitting in his wheelchair instead, something that Rimi had become accustomed to. Do you have Nanami's hand? Yeah, I brought it with me. Rimi opened the box and presented it to Takumi. Thank you. Can't we call him something else? I know the other guy can be Taku, but call this guy Shogun or something.
直せるかな
Can it still be reattached? We can fix this, can't we?
わからない。
I don't
でも
know.
この病院なら
But this hospital does have a cryopreservation facility. Ah, so that's the plan. Of course, freezing it would be better than nothing, but there was no guarantee that it could ever be returned to her. That was what his eyes conveyed to her.
大丈夫
It'll be fine. We'll fix this. I know we will. Ribby boldly declared this with a positive flair.
きっと治るって
I believe
信じ
with all my heart that we'll get it back to her.
もっともその前に
But
ナナ
first,
ミちゃんを助け出さなきゃい
I've
けない
got to get her out of there.
ナナミは殺されることはないと思う。
I don't believe her life is in
焦って動
danger.
くことはないよ。
There's no need to be so hasty.
冷静なんだね
Well, don't you seem pretty calm about all this?
ごめん
Sorry.
今言った言葉は
Just
忘れて
forget I said that.
それよりタクは今
More
どこに
importantly,
わかる
do you know where Taku is right now? Turns out he's in this hospital.
この病院に搬送されてきた
He was brought to this hospital
精神科の病室
and is
で
currently asleep in the psychiatric ward.
そうなの
Are you serious? Rimi's eyes widened and she immediately burst out of the room. Why? Are you gonna be the sister? 'Cause Hazuki told us that Nanami came by. Rimi's gonna come by and just be like, I'm his sister, yeah. Is that how this plays? Visiting hours had long since ended, forcing Rimi to conceal the sound of her footsteps as she traversed the dim hallways. She knew that both Nozomi and the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light were among the hospital staff, and she could not afford to attract any unwanted attention. Following a long and arduous trek, she arrived at the room that Takumi had informed her of. Upon inspecting her surroundings to ensure she would not be seen, she slowly opened the door. Okay, so maybe not her sister, or maybe not his sister, because Hazuki has no way of knowing this is happening. The room was pure white, the entirety providing not even the slightest hint of warmth. Rimi silently approached the bed in the center of the room. Taku lay there, sleeping deeply. His forehead beaded with sweat, his eyebrows were furrowed, and a moan would occasionally escape his lips. Rimi reached out toward Taku's cheek and gently caressed it. We had a dream about Nanami trying to feed us tofu or something when we were here the first time. I can't remember if there was a hallucination of something touching our cheek or not.
ごめんねあなたを
I'm sorry.
守ってあげられなくて
I couldn't protect you. Yeah, you just ran off. You know, you could have helped with all this. Unable to withhold her emotions any longer, she whispered that into his ear. And now are we our boy? A world of complete and utter white. In fact, we're about to have the very flashback I was just talking about, aren't we? And I was lying right in the center of it all. It felt as if I was floating. I couldn't figure out what direction I was facing. The silence was deafening. If someone were here to tell me this was the afterlife, I couldn't see myself contesting it. That was how monotonous, simplistic, tranquil, orderly, immaculate, empty, and peaceful the world was. And then Nanami showed up and ruined it. So, we'll go ahead and skippity-doo-dah to the next thing, because I have a feeling this is going to be exactly the same. And that is the end of the Rimi interludes. There's some really good stuff in there. I enjoyed that, but next time, we start with the beginning of the ending proper. So, I will see you next time for that. Look forward to it. Take care.